Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Parallax Abstraction, and welcome to another episode of the Geek Bravado Ramble. It is Monday, February 18th, 2014, and it's about 7:30 at night. I'm actually... has my puppy decided to make an appearance? Let us see. People love dogs on the internet, right? Hey, there he is. Hi, Riley. This is Riley. Despite his size, he's only a year and a half old. He's a Bernese Mountain Dog Golden Retriever mix with a little bit of Pyrenees in him. Hey, buddy. What's going on? Hello. Yes, we had a big walk tonight, and he had some chicken bits fed to him from dinner. So he's in a good mood. So he hangs out with me down here in the evening usually. So he'll probably... There's a big beanbag on the floor here that he snoozes on. So he... might be doing that at some point. Hey, bud? Yes. Say hi to the internet. Yes, people love dogs, and you were among the cutest. Anyway, thought I'd start off with that, because this is kind of a little bit of a heavy topic. So, hey, start off on a light note there, right? Why not? Okay. Let's see if I can get that looking decent again. All right. So, hopefully this is going to look a little bit different this time. I made a couple of adjustments to my webcam that will hopefully... make the light a little less blown out looking. I don't have any stage lighting in here, so there's shadows and whatnot, but hey, it's this is amateur, right? So what the hell. So anywho, so this is actually my second take of this video. I did one last week, and it was actually it ended up being really long. It was almost 45 minutes, and I went and listened to it again, and it was just me repeating a lot of the same points over and over again. So I'm trying it again. Hopefully it'll be a little bit better this time. I was in kind of a lousy mood that day too, which didn't help any. So, but what we're here to talk about today is I actually haven't settled on the title for this post yet, but I was going to try to do some pun variant of "You Can't Stop the Signal." But we're here to talk about what has been a topic of a lot of conversation in the last couple of weeks, which is, last year really, but the whole subject of hatred and vitriol on the internet and what can be done about it. And there's been a lot of discussion around this in general, how it has been applicable to a lot of different people. It's come up in the games press a lot because that's where a lot of this stuff originates, but it's come up in the context of stuff like Anita Sarkeesian and a number of other, the Phil Fish thing, and here you go, buds, and a number of other developers. And of course, in the last week, it really culminated in the whole Flappy Bird fiasco. I'm not going to recall all that here. My God, it's been written about everywhere to a rather ridiculous, kind of sad degree. And so you can find out about that anywhere you want. You're going to keep your head in here, aren't you? You can find out about that anywhere you want. I wrote a blog post on this, calling out what I thought were some of the more suspicious elements of the whole Flappy Bird fiasco. And just to put this out there, the content of that post still stands by and large. There's been a little bit more info that's come out about it, not a ton. And what was suspicious to me about that whole situation is still suspicious. And that's the thing, it's only suspicions. I could be completely wrong. Kind of hope I am, to be honest with you. But I've been around a while, and I tend to have a good nose for this stuff. So we'll see anyway. But that whole controversy and the fact that it got so incredibly big, and the fact that Flappy Bird sort of reached well beyond the scope of just the normal gaming community, got a lot of people, it got a lot more attention, and it drew a lot more attention to this whole issue of what happens when people on the internet have an unfiltered, anonymous way to communicate, and what that leads to, and what can be done about it, because it's a big problem. Many believe it's a growing problem. I'm not 100% sure of that, but so I'm just looking over here because I'm bringing up, there was a lot of commentary on this from a lot of the usual press suspects, a lot of the people who are known for making commentary on subjects like this. And I'm going to be honest with you, it was a slow news week, which I'm sure brought some of that up. But one of the articles that I read, and that I actually read the comments of, all of like 600 and some of them at the time, was an article that Patrick Klepek wrote on Giant Bomb called Our Internet Empathy Problem. It's easy enough to find, but I'll link to it. Well, it'll be in the blog post, and I'll probably link to it in the video as well if any of you are watching this and don't read the blog. But you should read the blog. That's what this is about. And it talked... I don't agree with Patrick Klepek on some things. I almost said a lot of things, and that's not really true. I do agree with him on a lot of things, but when it comes to certain core topics... namely things like VR, indie games to the degree that he takes them, and especially Apple's relevance to gaming, we tend to disagree quite a bit, which is fine. But he's one of the few guys who writes about video games who I think has truly earned the title of journalist. There's not many of them, but he's definitely one of them. And he wrote an article that recaps some of the Flappy Bird stuff, including a screenshot of some of the really horrible garbage that this guy got directed at him. Mostly, ironically enough, when he announced that he was taking Flappy Bird down, people saying, insulting him, and in many cases throwing straight up, no room for misinterpretation, death threats at him for doing that, and how this has affected his life, the life of this one young man in Vietnam who made a pretty crappy game, but one that happened to go viral and got him attention that he presumably, assuming he didn't game the system, see the other post, never would have expected. And that's a weird, it's a big problem. And the thing, Patrick's article was good in terms of recapping the problem and the effect it has on people, an effect that a lot of people don't fully appreciate. People say, you've heard this before. You've heard the arguments that people have made about, oh, these people just need to grow a thicker skin and stop being divas and blah, blah, blah. This would be no problem for me if I was making 50 grand a day, etc., etc., etc. And to be fair, that was one of the things that I thought was suspicious about Flappy Bird, was the fact that 50K a day can buy a lot of tolerance, especially when you're getting death threats over Twitter and all you have to do is ignore it to, don't look at Twitter to not have to deal with that stuff. And it is a little strange, but different strokes for different folks, right? And at least everything I've been reading about this guy does make him seem pretty humble and pretty genuine, which is cool. You should just go read the article. I'm not going to recap it here. The problem that I have with his article, and the problem that I have with a lot of articles on this subject, is the fact that it offers no real solutions. And this is a criticism to Patrick's credit that he has acknowledged, that he doesn't really know what the solutions are, and that maybe the article would have done better to try to propose some. And I'll give him credit for that. If this was a Ben Kuchera article, there would have been no admission of fault whatsoever. Just vehement defense. But the thing there's two things I don't like about it. I didn't like that, and I also didn't like the fact that his article really came across to me as pretty finger waggy. And what I mean by that is he has taken the position lately when it comes to dealing with some of his own trolls, and having witnessed some of the trolling of the much greater trolling of some characters. Characters is the wrong word. I apologize. People like Anita Sarkeesian. She's not a character. She is a genuine person. People in this space, and when he's seen some of what they have to deal with, he has taken the position that ignoring these people is not working. They need to be called out. They need to be held to account. They need to be shamed for their behavior. And his article, to me, very much came across as taking the position that if you are not doing that, if you are not calling out these assholes when you see them, if you are not making a point of doing this, of really putting your stake in the ground with regards to these people, then basically you are part of the problem. The article didn't go so far as to say you are as bad as the trolls if you let them get away with it, but it did take a position. Sorry, Riley's just chewing on something here. I kind of wish he wasn't. But his article very much took the position that, to me, that people who don't stand up to this crap are part of the problem. And I honestly take real offense to that and real resentment to that because, I mean, let me give you a little bit of historical context here. I do understand what's happening to some of these guys. I run a very small YouTube channel that is not very popular, but I've had to deal with my fair share of really, really horrible YouTube comments. Certainly not to the degree that the more popular guys do, and volume in terms of numbers does matter. I appreciate that, but I've had to deal with that. And back when I was a teenager, back when the internet was still a pretty new thing, we're talking 1996. I've been on the internet since '94, just before it became really popular, so I'm an internet hipster. I have received that level of hatred before. I was involved in a really, really stupid piece of drama involving the old demo scene and music tracking scene. If you're old enough, you know what I'm talking about, what that was in the mid-'90s. And it was a stupid drama basically involving a friend who ended up copying somebody else's music and claiming it as his own, and I released it under the banner of this little group we had going on at the time. And a bunch of people called it out and said, hey, this guy plagiarized, and I blindly stepped in and defended it and got on the nerves of some pretty influential people in this scene, people who and this is when I was so ignorant of the internet that I really had no idea what people were capable of. The whole idea of this anonymity and what it breeds in people was not a thing. It was not like there's been studies done on this. There was no such thing at that point in time. And I got plenty of email hate. I got plenty of email death threats, which freaked me out because I had no idea that they were bullshit. And I also got something even worse, which was that I got somebody managed to dig up my phone number and actually called my private line at my house where I was living. I was living with my mom at the time, and left a voicemail saying in no uncertain terms, like they didn't reference themselves as part of this drama, but that was obviously what it was from. But they basically said, I am going to find you and kill you and your whole family. And they said it in a tone of voice that was sounded extremely serious. And I had a full-on panic attack, heart racing, sweating, the whole bit. And I didn't sleep properly for the better part of a week as a result of that. And it was even worse because at that time, like, the Ottawa police didn't even have a website at that point in time. Like, the police didn't understand any of this. Cyberbullying, cybercrime, all that stuff like that. No one really understood that. This is when terms like information superhighway was still a part of common vernacular. And I tried to call the police to report this death threat to them, and they were like, so some dude from IRC, we don't even know what that is, called and left you a voicemail saying he's going to kill you. Yeah, that's fun. You go have fun with your little tech toys. They blew it off because they didn't think it was a real thing, and there was no protocol for this back then. So no one would agree to deal with it. I couldn't get the call traced. I couldn't do anything. So I know what that's like, and this was before people learned to shake off a certain amount of that. But I understand what people say as well, which is that if you're bombarded with this stuff day in and day out, even if you initially have a thick skin, it gets hard to deal with that stuff. There was a comment I will try to link to as well if I can find it from Total Biscuit recently that he put on Reddit. He was talking about how Total Biscuit is a guy I have a lot of respect for. A lot of people either love him or hate him, but he's a guy I have a lot of respect for, and honestly, this YouTube channel was inspired by him and what he does. Like, I don't know if I would have decided to try to do this stuff if it wasn't for him, so I owe a lot to him. But he is known for being a colossal asshole on the internet, and he was anyway. And he recently started to back away from social media because the amount of negative feedback he was getting partially because of his aggressive attitude, but also just in general, was getting so bad that it was starting to affect his mental health and his physical health. Like he was saying his hair was going gray, he's eating badly, he's not sleeping properly, he's having panic attacks, all of these other things. And so he shut off all his YouTube comments as part of the YouTube new comment system fiasco. But he shut off his comments. He's actually given his Twitter account over to his staff, and he recently backed out of his subreddit, and someone on there was bitching at him that it was a betrayal of his fans that he backed out of his subreddit, and he posted this very long not manifesto, but essay, basically talking about how hard it is for him and the fact that he can't stop reading the feedback, and it's killing him. But he needs to do his job, so he's just backing away from everything. And that prompted some other prominent YouTubers to pitch in. NerdCubed pitched something in. Francis put up a video this morning, a very actually moving and heartfelt video talking about this problem as well. I'll link to all that stuff so you can read it. And it does feel to a certain degree like this is reaching a bit of a boiling point with some of this stuff. And the fact of the matter is, like, I was originally just going to write a blog post about this, talking about how this is something that can't be stopped. And to a large degree, I don't think it can be. That's what I didn't like about Patrick's article, is that he was writing about a phenomenon that I believe cannot be ever fully stopped. And the way that he was basically insinuating that those who don't want to engage in the war and open themselves up to that same level of abuse by calling out the abusers are part of the problem is really offensive to me. I would love nothing more than to call out people like that, but I don't want to get involved in that. I don't have the mental stamina or the time to spend fending off internet morons, especially when, I hate to say it, but people like Patrick and Total Biscuit and that's part of their job. It shouldn't be part of their job to have to filter that kind of abuse. But when you are an internet celebrity and you are someone in a prominent position in a medium that has fans, if you want to call them that react that way, that's part of the job. And it's really shitty, but it's kind of the way it is. And I think that places a wholly unfair and undue burden on your fans, the ones who don't engage in that, which is the vast majority, to tell them that they're part of the problem if they don't step up and do something about it. And I was going to write a post that just said, it sucks that you guys need, that people need to be told to suck this up, but that's really what you need to do, because you cannot. Ultimately, if you wanted to make this go away, you would have to change the core tenets, principles, and functionality of the internet to such a degree that I dare say it would be impossible. And I'm not even talking from a moral, ethical, legal point of view. I'm talking from a purely technical point of view. The internet was created and structured around the concept of anonymity. You would have to so fundamentally, everything would break. To be able to fix that, to be able to eliminate the tenets that make this stuff possible would be physically impossible. The entire internet, you would literally have to reboot the whole internet, the whole concept of the internet. That's just never going to happen. It's never ever going to happen. And the fact of the matter is, I'm a firm believer that the ability for easy anonymity on the internet has done far more good than harm. Yes, you have asshole trolls. Yes, you have people throwing death threats at gaming personalities and game developers, and yes, that sucks. But think of all the things in the last number of years that have happened as a result of oppressed people being able to speak out and say what they want to be able to say because of the internet. Because of things like that. And sorry guys, I'm just I'm supposed to record a video with Dr. Poulet tonight, and it looks like he's having internet problems. So, I believe it does. I believe it has done more good than harm, and I would fight to my last drop of blood to stop the internet from being what it is in that regard. Regulating is not going to help. The internet is an open system. It's a worldwide system. There is no way you could regulate it on an international level. And the fact of the matter is, everybody has been guilty of this stuff at one point. Patrick did an entire TED Talk in which one of the key points that he made was talking about a stupid, threatening remark that he made to a giant bomb user out of rage, out of passion. If the internet was regulated to the point where every threat like that was actionable, he could be in jail right now or facing criminal charges. So could I. So could probably you. So could probably everyone, because everyone at some point on the internet has said stupid shit out of a fit of rage that they didn't mean. Stupid, offensive, in some cases maybe even hateful shit. I know I have, and I didn't ultimately mean it. Sometimes when you post things like that, you don't even mean them to come across the way they do. But because you're not thinking clearly when you post them, they come across as a lot more hostile than you thought. And that's the problem. If you make everything like that actionable and regulated, it just doesn't work anymore. And that was the thing that was bugging me, is I was like, this is never going to change. And if anybody is not able to accept that, if you are a game developer or a games press person or a YouTuber or whatever, and you don't have it in you to put up with the abuse, I don't blame you. That's not a fault. You shouldn't be faulted for that. But you have to be able to do it. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it proper. It doesn't make it not a problem, but it's not going to change. So you either have to learn to deal with it or you have to get out. You have to do something else for your sake. Forget anybody else. For your own sake, if you can't handle it, you have to do something else. And I mean, it's a big concern to me as well. I mean, I knew that when I started this YouTube channel, if it got popular, that if it got popular, I could be opening myself up to a certain amount of that. And that concerned me a lot, and I still think about it. It still worries me. But I knew what was involved. I knew what YouTube was like, and I didn't think I could get around it just because I wanted to. And the fact is, some of these people also reap what they sowed to a certain degree. People can hate me all they want for not siding 100% with people like Phil Fish. I feel bad for the guy who made Flappy Bird, because even if he got the success he has illegitimately, he didn't deserve anything like he was getting. Certainly not. He deserved criticism, not hatred. No one deserves hatred. And the fact of the matter is, Phil Fish didn't deserve a lot of that stuff either. But in the case of Phil Fish, and yes, even in the case of people like Total Biscuit, to a certain degree you reap what you sow. Phil Fish was just as bad as any of his trolls on Twitter. I mean, he has infamously told people to choke on his dick and commit suicide, among many, many other things. And I don't think you get to lower yourself to the level of trolls and then bitch. Like, you don't get to go headfirst into the sewers voluntarily and then bitch that it stinks down there. I don't think that's fair. And Total Biscuit did the same thing. He frequently engaged with his fans in a very hostile way, and in some cases even somewhat reasonable criticism in a very direct, very, very hostile way. And while you're always going to get a certain amount of hatred and trolling just by existing, I don't see how you can reasonably argue that it won't get worse by egging those people on. And the fact of the matter is, the other problem I take with I have issue with Patrick's article is calling out the online bullies. He said, people have to start doing this. These people can't be allowed to get away with it. Ignoring them isn't working. And you know what? You're right. Ignoring them largely isn't working. But it's more effective than enabling them. Trolls want attention. A certain amount of them will just throw something at you and move on, knowing that you'll ignore it because they still think they've gotten to you, and those are never going to go away. But when you respond to a certain number of these people, you're validating them because they know they got to you in that situation, and you're just going to encourage them to keep doing it. A certain number of trolls will always exist, but a certain number of trolls, I firmly believe, will just give up if they know they're not going to get a response out of you. And when you give them the response, you've just thrown gasoline on the fire. I firmly believe that. Calling out the bullies is not going to solve the problem. It's going to make it worse. I am certain of it. And I think that's probably something Patrick's going to learn by doing that. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong. I would love the opposite to happen, but I don't think it's gonna. And if there is a solution to this problem, because that's the thing, you can't stop this, but I do think there are things that can be done to mitigate it. And So there's two things to that. One of them I've already touched on, which is a reap what you sow kind of thing. Don't sink to their level. Don't enable the trolls. Don't feed the trolls. You know, that's the old adage. Don't feed the trolls. And I believe that's very true. You shouldn't be. Don't sink to their level and then complain that you're on their level. And that, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Patrick Klepek. I don't care if you're Phil Fish. I don't care if you're a big-time Hollywood celebrity or music celebrity with 30 million followers or whatever. You ever notice how I've noticed this trend just in my own observation, but have you ever noticed that when a big celebrity comes on Twitter, say somebody like George Takei or Patrick Stewart or Leonard Nimoy or William Shatner, you ever notice how when these guys come on Twitter and you start following them very early on, you'll see them posting a lot of stuff that's clearly from them. Like in my Twitter client that I use MetroTwit, and you can actually set it to tell you what client somebody posted from. And you'll notice that these guys show that they're posting from their phones or from computers or whatever early on. So you know the stuff is coming from them and they're saying it. And then their posts start to dry up a couple of weeks in. And then a couple of months later, you're going to see that they're posting tweets that are very, very similarly worded, and they don't come from Twitter for iPhone. They come from If This Then That or Buffer or one of those other automated platforms that are often used by PR companies. And the reason for that is that a lot of these celebrities get on Twitter, talk for a while, get all kinds of bile and hatred back, and go, "This sucks. I don't want to be a part of this anymore." And then they feel they have to be on social media to promote themselves, so they hand their Twitter feeds over to their publicists and say, "You deal with this. I don't wanna." That's why George Takei only posts like meme photos now, and Patrick Stewart posts like one thing every 2 weeks, which is probably what he does is he posts that and then he just shuts Twitter off and never looks at it. And that's a damn shame, because it's supposed to be a platform for these people to directly engage with their audience, but their audience is so full of morons that they just go, "Well, I don't want any part of this." And who could blame them? I'd be the same way. I think there's actually, now that I think about it, I think there's three solutions to this. So one of them is don't reap what you sow. We've already said that. I think the second one is that people need to stop thinking that social media is some kind of unbridled requirement to have any kind of success. I've read other articles. I think there was one article by Ben Kuchera a while back that said, what do we do about this? Game developers can't not be on social media because you need it to have any chance of success because you have to engage with your audience. I think that's utter bullshit. You don't need to be personally, as a game developer, you do not need to be personally on Twitter or on Facebook or on wherever in order for your game to have any chance of success. You don't need to be interacting with your audience on that level. You want to create a Twitter account and a Facebook page to put up announcements about your game and maybe post some development milestones or whatever, sure. But no one is going to tell me that a game that sells thousands or tens of thousands of copies is going to sell so few less that it would be a failure if the developer wasn't personally on Twitter engaging with idiots all the time. Flappy Bird didn't take off because the guy had engaged fans on Twitter. He had like no followers before Flappy Bird became popular. That's not why it took off. The fact of the matter is, it's not necessary to be involved with it to that degree. If you're making a game, for example, maybe you have to be on Twitter doing something, but you do not have to be one-on-one engaging with people all the time. That is just nonsense. The big AAA games, the guys who run Rockstar are not personally engaging with fans on Twitter, and GTA 5 has sold like 35 million copies. So I think that's nonsense. I think this stuff can be used when appropriate and does not have to be used to that degree. But I think the number one solution to this problem, and it's not a solution, it is a stopgap at best, but I think the number one thing that can help lower this down and bring the tide of discourse higher is the companies themselves, is the social networks themselves, is the Twitters, the Facebooks, the Reddits, the other networks like that. These places profit directly off of the content that their users generate. And part of the reason they don't do anything about this is that the more content there is, the more data they have to mine. They prefer when people are just spewing as much garbage out there as possible. Doesn't even necessarily matter if it's relevant. They just want more data. They want more tweets in the system. They want more Facebook posts in the system, more likes in the system. And honestly, if you're going to wag your finger at anybody saying it's part of the problem, it's them. You know, look at a place like Reddit, for example, and I'll probably get some hate for this, but I don't care. Reddit is a site that shadow banned my account for posting links to my own videos, because nobody else would, in relevant subreddits that did not expressly say, where basically posting links to your own content was not against the rules. And some power-tripping admin shadow banned me, and they have ignored my appeals so far to get dealt with. Meanwhile, this is the site that protects the creep shots guy, that has subreddits devoted to upskirts, and where people where a bunch of self-appointed internet detectives mistakenly pointed at the wrong guy for the Boston Marathon bombings, who later committed suicide. They will fight tooth and nail to protect people who do that kind of thing, but will ban someone for posting links to their own content when no one else will. I'm not even bitter about that in particular, but it gives you an example of how screwed up priorities for some of these companies are. And this is the fact of the matter. You can't claim free speech in this situation. Everybody will go, oh, censorship, free speech, blah, blah, blah. That's complete crap. These are private companies. These are private organizations. You have no guarantee of free speech on a privately owned social network. It's amazing that people have to have this explained to them, but the constitutional protection of free speech is on a government level. The government cannot step in and say you cannot post that hateful tweet. Twitter can say you can post or not post whatever the hell you want, or whatever the hell they want, and they can say you can't do this stuff. And I believe it's on these companies to do it. These are multi-billion-dollar companies who are making buckets of money. Well, not Twitter. But they are making buckets of money off of this user-generated content. They have both the technological and, I believe, moral means to do something about this. Back when the Anita Sarkeesian thing blew up, and this wasn't because of her, I believe it was because of some person in the UK, Twitter had said they were looking at implementing a report abuse function, and it wasn't like the current thing where you report a spammer and it's handled in sort of an automated fashion. They were talking about putting a function in place that would allow you to report an abusive tweet, someone who was saying hateful things or making death threats, and those tweets would be reviewed by an actual human being, and if they were determined to be as bad as you said they were, that account could be banned. It could even have an IP ban put in place so they couldn't sign up for troll accounts. And if the stuff was severe enough, they could even escalate it and make it actionable by law enforcement based on that. And I don't think that ever really happened. Certainly, I haven't heard anything to that degree. And I think that's wrong. I think these companies have an obligation to do something about this. They have the means to put a report abuse function in place. They all make enough money and have enough revenue that they can hire a staff of people to deal with this stuff. And I think they need to do that. I think there needs to be a report abuse function on every major social network so that if you get a death threat, you click that button, it goes to a human being who determines if it's real or not. And yes, if it's actionable, if somebody sends Anita Sarkeesian an email saying, I will rape and kill you, that tweet, along with relevant location information or tracking information, should be forwarded to law enforcement for action. And that's not going to solve the problem. That's not going to make it go away. But I bet you there are a lot of people who put up a lot of this garbage without thinking, who will very quickly think twice when they find out, hey, if you post this garbage, you could get in trouble. You can... no problem goes away completely because of the threat of law enforcement. But a lot of, say, casual internet haters who maybe don't know how to mask themselves or can't be bothered to may pay attention when that happens. Because just making people use their real names isn't going to solve the problem. The new YouTube comment system required people to use their real names. Facebook requires people to use their real names. And there's all kinds of hateful garbage posted on those places all the time. So it's definitely... even removing the anonymity is not the problem, but I think these companies do have an obligation to step up and do something on their end using the technology that they clearly have, because that's how they made their billions. And they need to step up and say, this is not acceptable. We are going to do something about it. We are going to do as much as we can to curtail this largely unsolvable problem. And I think, at least right now, that's the best we got. I think it's on these companies to do something about it. I think they do fully deserve to have the finger pointed at them, because I believe they are not doing enough, and I believe they are part of the problem, because Twitter and Facebook and the like are the vectors by which this hate is delivered. And you don't get to sit back and say, oh, there's nothing we can do about it. Bullshit. You're making money on this. It's your problem. Period. And I think that the ultimate thing needs to be a combination of action on their part and the fact that people need to understand that this is a problem, that what is left after that is done is never going to go away. It's never going to change. And you can either try to learn how to deal with it, and if you can't, then you need to stop engaging in it. Total Biscuit has proven that you can still run a successful YouTube channel without using social media. Yeah, you can say he did that after he built up his audience, and to a certain degree that's true. But he shut it all off, and nothing changed. And NerdCube said something very similar. So it can be done. There are tons of successful games out there by developers who don't actively use Twitter. You don't have to. And if you can put up with the abuse, if it just rolls off your back like it does for some people, good for you. And, dive in and enjoy. But if you can't handle it, then get out. And I say that to try to help, not to be mean. It's just the way it is. This is a problem. If I can ever make this YouTube channel popular, this is a problem I may run into at some point, and I'm going to have to decide how much I want to engage with it, because I don't know. I suffer from depression. I don't know if that's something that I want to involve myself in, and maybe I won't. And even if that hurts my growth, that's something I have to accept personally. There is personal responsibility on all sides here, and you only get super engaged in this stuff if you choose to, and if you can't accept the reality of a situation, then you just need to not be in that situation. There's nothing you can do about it, and it really sucks. I wish it wasn't like that, but it is like that. And I think that's the big thing. It's just you need to be able to tolerate it, and those who provide the vector for this need to stop being complacent in it. But I really take exception to the idea that the people who do not want to get involved and do not think the best solution to dealing with trolls is to call them out are part of the problem. I think that is absolutely wrong, and I think that is a really poor, short-sighted position to take. And I think demanding that everyone jump into the sewers, even those who don't want to, is mean-spirited and kind of selfish, to be honest with you. But I don't necessarily think Patrick Klepek was taking it to that much of an extreme. He probably wasn't. I don't think he thinks that way, but that is how it came across, and that is something that I think the people taking strong positions on this need to know. I understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of that stuff, but you can't stand around in a paranoid fashion in a room and go, "You're all in on this," because that's just going to alienate more people and make more people go, "Well, if that's what you think, then fuck you." That just costs you fans and doesn't lose you any trolls in the process either. So it's a really tough problem, and it really sucks that, frankly, that humanity is like this, because this is ultimately the way it is. People say, "Oh, it's worse now, it's worse now." No, it isn't. People have always been this way. People used to write garbage like this in letters to the editor. The fact is, it's easier to spew the garbage that sits in people's subconscious, because everybody thinks this stuff. The smart people, the good people, don't vocalize it. But the fact of the matter is, this is all stuff that's in everybody's head. I thought this stuff. You've thought this stuff. Patrick Klepek has thought this stuff. Everybody has at some point or another. The fact of the matter is, technology has given us the means to put it out there more easily. But that stuff has always been there. And people don't think this hateful garbage more now than they used to. They just are more easily able to post it without thinking. And there's ways to mitigate it. There's ways you can't stop it. And I just wanted to put that out there. That's my opinion on the matter. I think too many people are trying to make this sound like a black and white problem, and it's not a black and white problem. It's a gray situation, as most situations are, to be honest with you. It's not as simple as anyone wants to make it sound. And yeah, I just wanted to toss that out there. So this video still ended up being long, but it's better than the last one. The last one was a lot more incoherent and a lot more rambly, made a lot less sense, I think. So hope to get the post that goes along with this up in a day or two, and this video will go up at the same time, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I'd love to chat with people about this. So if it interests you, yeah, leave a comment either in the blog or in the YouTube comments, and we'll see what happens. But there's going to be a lot more discussion about this in this year and in the coming years, and it will be very interesting to see how that goes. But I don't know. I hope we can figure something better out for this. I hope there's someone out there a lot smarter than me who comes up with a solution to this that works, because that person deserves to be the wealthiest person on earth. But anyway, well, thank you guys very much for watching anyway, and I will see you next time. Take it easy.